everyone, Andrew here. So I kind of wanted to do something different today in terms of, topic of discussion. So not a Falcom video today, and I apologize for that. However, I do have a pretty big video lined up for you all, talking about one of my favorite studios as of right now, and that is tookyogames. It is comprised of some really cool game developers and artists and a really awesome music composer. And I just kind of wanted to talk about them a bit because here recently they have released two games that had some absolutely insane release windows. And I think they might have been slightly overlooked because of their release windows, but I think you should consider checking them out. So without further ado, let's quickly just talk about the people involved and we'll go from there. Alright, let's start with the big man himself, Kazutaka Kodaka. So Kodaka was born and raised in Tokyo. He attended the Nihon University College of Art, where he majored in film studies. He was very big on film and anime, which if you've played any of his games, you can definitely see that in all of his work. And I think this is honestly one of the big reasons that I personally feel attached to him. Just as a gamer, like I really appreciate his work. Because I am someone who graduated with a degree in animation and game development. So I spent a good chunk of my time in college writing film scripts and producing short films and developing games, when I wasn't in a recording booth myself, doing voice acting sessions for other people's projects. But that's a story for another time. Ultimately, what you need to know is that Kodaka went on to work at Spike Chunsoft, where he pitched a certain little game series you might know called Danganronpa. He has since moved on, and he's made his own little company by the name of tookyogames, with a few people that I think deserve recognition as well. So without further ado, let me introduce the one and only Kotaro Uchikoshi. This is another very notable Japanese game director and writer. Uchikoshi is known pretty much for his work on a certain little genuine gem known as 9 Hours, 9 Persons, 9 Doors, which marked his debut as a director. Zero Escape, Virtue's Last Reward, and Zero Time Dilemma are a couple of his other games that are actually follow-ups to 999 and are known as the Zero Escape series, and which, in my honest opinion, if you're looking, they're all worth it. They're all definitely worth your time if you're into science fiction tinged thriller stories with interesting characters, and just overall those games they're very interesting. He's also responsible for directing and writing the AI The Somnium Files games, specifically the first two. So we've got two writer-director types, and that's great. But what about artists and music composers? Well, we've got Rui Komatsuzaki, who is the lead artist for the Danganronpa games, Master Detective Archives Raincode, Tribe 9, and most recently the 100-Line Last Defense Academy. Komatsuzaki's character designs are pretty much recognizable almost instantly, due to how stylistic they are, and they've been consistent for like the last 15 years. So I cannot see any of that changing, just considering how iconic the style has become. And in terms of tookyogames, Matsuzaki was also responsible for the promotional art for Death Come True. More on that later. Another artist in tow is Shima Doriru, or Sima Doriru, who also worked on Danganronpa, Master Detective Archives Raincode, Tribe 9, the 100-Line Last Defense Academy, right alongside Rui Komatsuzaki. Shima Doriru also worked on AI The Somnium Files as an art designer and ultimately worked as the lead artist for Shuten Order, which we will be discussing later on in this video. Now for one of the coolest composers in the industry, Masafumi Takada. If you're someone who watched our No More Heroes stream, this name should be familiar since I had a little bit of a nerd out moment talking about this absolute legend. Takada has quite the list of phenomenal soundtracks, including Killer 7, No More Heroes, Vanquish, The Evil Within, Kid Icarus Uprising, and of course, all the Danganronpa games, Master Detective Archives Raincode, Tribe 9, the 100-Line Last Defense Academy, Shuten Order. It goes on and on. The dude's a legend. His soundtracks are always phenomenal, and I like listening to them. Now that we've discussed the key players, let's look at the games this lovely crew has worked on under the tookyogames umbrella, starting with Death Come True. So Kodaka both wrote and directed this one, and while it's pretty short, it is actually rather interesting when compared to the other games on this list. Basically, it's a interactive film adventure game where you follow protagonist Makoto Karaki, who just woke up in a hotel room with amnesia, which Kodaka really likes amnesia, doesn't he? Not gonna complain, because usually what follows makes up for it. In this case, Makoto turns on a television to discover that he is a serial killer, and the entire hotel is sealed shut, making it impossible to leave the hotel. From there, you must piece together what's actually going on. It only runs for a couple hours, and I'm not going to spoil it here, but it's worth getting if you're a fan of Kodaka's work, or you're just looking for something a little different. Alright, now in a complete tonal shift, let me introduce you to World's End Club, another game with Kodaka directing, but this time in cooperation with Kotaro Uchikoshi and Takumi Nakazawa. So both of them handled the writing effectively instead of Kodaka this time. The basic gist is that a group of students survive an explosion that hit near Tokyo and end up in a World's End land. There's like a underwater theme park where they have to participate in a life or death game. Huh. Sounds familiar enough. This one's certainly strange as it's predominantly a side-scrolling platforming action-adventure game. Masafumi Takada naturally was the lead composer for the project. However, on this project he also worked with Jun Fukuda, a fellow composer who also shreds the guitar. The two worked together on No More Heroes, so it makes sense why they would collaborate further. While World's End Club was developed by Tokyo, the lead artist this time was actually an individual by the name of Take, which is someone you probably know from her work on Pokemon Sun and Moon, as well as Pokemon Sword and Shield. This next game I think is about where tookyogames started really finding their stride, and that is with Master Detective Archives Rancode. This was effectively an Avengers Assemble moment for tookyogames, with Kodaka, Kumatsuzaki, and Takada all coming together for the first time since Danganronpa V3. Some elements of this game are pretty similar to the aforementioned Danganronpa games, as you are a detective in training that has amnesia. Okay, Kodaka, I see you. Anyways, this game is completely in 3D and showcased that Kumatsuzaki's art style can transcend 2D art and make for a really unique and interesting visual aesthetic, even in 3D. I won't go on too long for this one, as I think it should be experienced, and I know Danganronpa fans might not get as much out of it, but if you enjoy those games and want something a little different yet familiar, I think this is definitely worth a look. Now we are getting into a bit of a discussion that has me quite depressed, not gonna lie. Tribe 9. When I saw this game was about to release earlier this year, I actually went and watched the anime that they had made back in like 2022. What fascinates me is that this is a tookyogames creation headed by Kodaka initially. While he concocted the world and overall story scenario, development and publishing of the game actually was handled by a company known as Akatsuki. This game rocks, first and foremost. I know it has gacha elements, and that's definitely a turnoff for a lot of people, but the characters you get for free are perfectly viable for the entire story, and the free polls did net me some pretty strong characters, so maybe I just don't have anything to complain about there. Anyways, this game has you playing as yet another amnesiac caught up in a death game. But not just any death game. It's extreme baseball, baby. Basically, to curb gang violence, the government of Neo-Tokyo implemented a law that has gangs settling disputes through a highly stylized and action-packed version of baseball, violence included. It is very silly, but I like it a lot. A big bad takes over and effectively sets up a bunch of orbital satellites that can execute individuals anywhere on Earth with exceptional precision. He forces the main character into a string of scenarios where you have to fight through different wards of Neo-Tokyo and ultimately play extreme baseball against whatever the lead gang of that area is. The losers of which, naturally in Kodaka game fashion, are executed. This game, for what it is, it's pretty darn fun, and the story and world are both pretty intriguing. Sadly, what I consider a very low blow is that unfortunately the game was considered a flop financially and will be shutting down its services on November 27th, 2025. I sincerely wish they would have completed the base game story at least, maybe later down the road complete it and release it as a standalone paid game, because I do think that it'd be pretty cool to have like a complete package that, you know, you buy once and that's it. And I feel like more people would play it. But for the time being, the story is being released as a doujin, being supervised by Kodaka, so I guess that's probably that. Anyways, I'm not here to be all gloomy about the loss of a great game. And trust me, it does hurt to see such a high quality game just be shuttered. However, I'm here to talk about some of the absolutely wild plays that tookyogames has made this year. So let's talk about the 100-line Last Defense Academy. Man, oh man, we are eating great with this one here. This is arguably one of my favorite games this year, and it really did bring the whole gang together. Kodaka, Uchikoshi, Komatsuzaki, Shimodoriru, and Takada. Everyone's here, and I am here for it as well. At a first glance, I would not blame you if you thought this was just another shot at making Danganronpa without the IP, because it mildly is, but it's also not. What we have here is a horror-adjacent visual novel combined with, of all things, a turn-based strategy RPG, complete with character upgrading and stat building and, you know, spending time with different members of the cast, you know, kind of your typical RPG fare there. Aesthetically, this game does it for me, giving me exactly what I wanted out of this crew of developers, and the soundtrack. Ooh, the soundtrack. Takada went all out with the soundtrack. Like, he hit every potential emotional high and low, as well as giving us an absolutely banging battle theme. The story initially opens up with your character knowing exactly who he is in the world, until a critical moment happens and, let's just say he wakes up in the school with amnesia. Well, at least he doesn't really know how he got there or why he is there. Kodaka loves amnesia, what can I say? It is effectively the same setup as Danganronpa to an extent, except instead of being thrust into a killing game where everyone can die suddenly, and at times rather gruesomely, you are tasked with protecting the school from incoming invaders as a last line of defense for humanity, hence the title Last Defense Academy. Naturally, your characters use a very cool device that allows them to utilize their blood to create weaponry and fight against the said invaders. It's very wacky, and I kind of love it. I don't want to spoil it or anything around it. I think it's just worth your time. Go check it out. I do want to say, though, that this game came out on April 24th of this year. You know what else came out on April 24th of the year of our Lord 2025? Nothing too crazy. Just a little French indie game that a large amount of people are proclaiming to be the strongest Game of the Year nominee. Huh. Yeah, I know it's purely coincidental, and these things do happen. But dropping the 100 line on the same exact date as Expedition 33 did two things. One, it made my wallet cry. And two, it made me wonder what the heck tookyogames, Mediavision, and Aniplex were thinking dropping this game right alongside one of the most anticipated games of the year. For this, I gotta say, they are insane, but you know what? I applaud them for it. This actually worked out pretty well, it would seem. Tookyogames was putting it out there that they might have to file for bankruptcy and potentially shut down because of what went into this game. Well, on top of the Tribe 9, you know, not performing the best. To me, that was a bit scary, because there's a genuine pool of talent at tookyogames that I do think makes some quality stuff. Thankfully, the 100 line did well enough, and the company is no longer at risk. But you know what? It's only been about 4 to 5 months since 100 line dropped, and tookyogames just dropped another game with yet another wild release date. And while I've yet to play it in full, I can at least say that releasing this game the day after Hollow Knight Silksong is yet another wild play, especially when other developers have adjusted their own release dates to avoid this exact situation. I understand that this new title was already set to release and they wanted to keep things to their schedule, but man alive, what a highly unfortunate release timing. I sincerely hope that this next game gets the attention they were hoping for, and if I can help push it with this video, I gladly will do so. That game is none other than Shuten Order, alternatively known as Shuten Kyodan. This is the latest game by Kodaka with yet another slapping soundtrack by Takada. The big thing here is that Shimodoriru is the lead artist on this project, and wow, I gotta say, visually, This game is incredibly stylized and colorful. It just pops. Shuten Order was developed in collaboration with DMM Games, who had a hand in the creation and handling of games such as Utaware Rumono, The Mask of Truth, and the seemingly wild sensation Uma Musume Pretty Derby. Sorry if I butcher that one. The basic gist of Shuten Order is that you play as Rei Shimobe, who has been resurrected after being murdered, which you know what that means. Amnesia time. Yay! Effectively, God tasks Rei, and yes, I mean God, the big man himself. He tasks Rei with solving her own murder in 4 days. I won't spoil anything here because I really can't spoil much. I just got back from a trip and the game came out while I was away. But I do know that this game has you investigating 5 different potential culprits, and in investigating each one, you engage with different genres of gameplay. They're all adventure games, but here's what we got. Stealth action horror, where you are avoiding a killer while performing your investigation. There's a mystery adventure where you solve a murder in a more traditional adventure game format. There's a multi-perspective visual novel where you swap between a group of characters trying to survive a terrorist attack. That's intriguing. There's also a romance adventure where you are building relationships with 3 primary characters and you're trying to win them over in order to determine which of them is responsible for giving you poison. That's a neat little twist. And finally, what is being labeled as an extreme escape adventure where you try to survive a death game. Excellent. Love to see that. Cool thing about that one is that Uchikoshi himself is credited as part of the writing team, so that's actually rather exciting. Looking forward to playing through that. All in all, it is great to see this crew making games together, even if they delve into the experimental from time to time. I personally will be supporting pretty much anything tookyogames puts out, as I am a fan of, well, pretty much everyone on the team. They're not afraid to get weird, and they're always on point when it comes to dropping absolutely gut-wrenching scenarios on the player, all while providing a clean and very stylish presentation that just works, especially paired with the masterful soundtracks that only Takada can provide. If you are interested or might be wondering why I made this video in the first place, I'm here first and foremost to applaud tookyogames for being absolute madmen with their release timings this year, but I'd also like to highly recommend people play the mainline Danganronpa games. I introduced them to a friend in college and he hated my guts for a couple months after finishing them, but eventually he came around and, you know, he would probably agree with me that they're phenomenal. If Danganronpa seems like it'd be a little too much for you, and I get it, the games are very dark and absolutely will mess you up emotionally if you allow yourself to get invested. I would recommend checking out 100 Line first. I think it is one of the best games of 2025 so far, definitely one of the longest games of 2025 with the amount of endings it has. Man, it's ambitious, and it's absolutely worth a look, and absolutely worth your time. Battles are not particularly difficult either, so I feel like most people should be able to enjoy the story to the fullest without much of a struggle. And here's kind of where my ultimate goal is for this video. If you decide to go through the Danganronpa games or the 100 Line, and you decide you want more, well, great news. There are plenty of games I can recommend from there. It goes without saying that pretty much anything from tookyogames is definitely worth looking into if you enjoy those games, but outside of that, the first 2 entries in the AI The Somnium Files are worth a look too, and I can't recommend the Zero Escape series enough. The Nonary games, which includes 999 and Virtue's Last Reward, are fantastic, and Zero Time Dilemma is just a great game all around. Highly recommended. And while it is incomplete, if you genuinely want more, go play Tribe 9 while you still can. The action combat is it's plenty fun, and the story is, in my opinion, very, very well crafted. Plus, the extreme baseball engagements are very cinematic and just look cool. All around, I love this crew, and I think they make some really special games that just stick with you well after the credits roll. Sure, not every game they produce is necessarily a banger or like a 10 out of 10 experience, but even their oddball games, like the 7 out of 10s and the 6 out of 10s, they're worth a look, even if just out of curiosity. So anyways, thank you for watching. Seriously, if you're at this point right now, I really, truly appreciate you. You know, if you liked what you saw, maybe consider liking and subscribing. That feels so wrong to ask, but it is what it is. Anyways, hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world, and I will see you next time.